Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a ton of new Duskmourn spoilers, which are pretty exciting. Lots of new combos, cool synergies. This set is pretty cool, pretty high power level, I believe, and a lot of really cool interactions within the set and also within other cards that are in standard and older formats. So let's jump right in with our first card, starting with the rare land that we got, Valgavoth's Lair, which is an enchantment land with hexproof, and it enters tapped, and as it enters, you choose a color, and you can tap to add 1 mana of the chosen color. So on the surface, it's sort of just like a mana fixer land. It's got hexproof, which is nice because it doesn't die to any land destruction or enchantment removal. But the most important thing is that it is a land that is also an enchantment, which is pretty rare, and I don't think we've really gotten any lands that are enchantments in a while, except for Urza Saga is the only other one I can even think of. So this is coming to standard, and it has a lot of synergy with bargain cards because you can just use this to bargain away. Like, for example, with Besiege the Mirror to bargain that and get another 4-drop card and put it directly into play. There's a lot of other bargain cards you could use this with. There's the Elvish Archivist, which when an enchantment comes into play, you draw a card, so that's kind of a synergy. Calyx as well with Constellation. Enchantments come into play, you get +1/+1 counters on creatures. You can also, I believe you can make a copy of this if you wanted to copy this land with Calyx, you could do that. And then there's a ton more enchantment synergies just built in the set. It also works nicely with Delirium because if you mill this or put it into the graveyard, you discard it. It counts as 2 card types for Delirium, both enchantment and a land. So there's certainly a lot of synergy there, and we'll see as we kind of go through the set, or if you've seen in the spoilers, that there's a lot of enchantment synergy in the set. So I think this card is going to see some play in standard, and it's going to have its uses for sure. So we'll see what those are, especially as the set gets more revealed. But already there's some good uses I can think of as we go through these cards. So the next card up is a new card type, which is an Enchantment Room, and it has 2 halves, so it's kind of a split card, and you can cast either half, and then the half that you cast, you get to unlock that half. Basically, you get the effect of it, and then as a sorcerer, you can pay the amount of mana cost of the other half and unlock that, so you get both halves online, essentially. So with the Dollmaker's Shop here on the left, you're probably going to play that first over the Porcelain Gallery in most games. And the Dollmaker's Shop says that whenever one or more non-toy creatures you control attack a player, create a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. So attack a player, I guess if you attack a Planeswalker, it doesn't count, but you essentially can get a 1/1 creature token each turn, each attack phase. Perhaps if you have more than one attack phase, you could get more than one creature. But it's a pretty powerful enchantment just on the left side. And on the right side, it says creatures you control have base power and toughness each equal to the number of creatures you control. So if you have a bunch of tokens, it kind of works with the other half. It'll buff up all those tokens, give them base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. So if you have 5 1/1s out, there'll all be 5/5/5s essentially. So, what cards in standard could you kind of use this with? So if you played a 1-drop on turn 1, for example, the Spyglass Siren, and then you play this on turn 2, you could attack right away and get another 1/1 there, and then you'd have kind of 2 artifacts already, a lot of permanents in play. So being able to kind of attack with a flyer, for example, would be pretty good because it can kind of get in every turn, and it triggers on attack. It doesn't have to even do combat damage to the opponent to get the 1/1 white toy artifact creature token. I also thought of like Teething Wormlet would be pretty good if you played that on 1 and then the Dollmaker Shop on 2, because an artifact would come into play. So it would basically trigger the Teething Wormlet every turn that you attack. So it just kind of get pumped up, +1/+1 counters and gain a life every single turn. And with Caustic Bronco, it could be pretty good because the converted mana cost of these room cards is both of the costs added together. So the casting cost of this total would be 8 with Caustic Bronco. If you saddled it and attacked and this was on top, you could hit your opponent for 8, but it's also just kind of a playable card for 2 mana that could go into a black-white deck, for example. Also with like Discover cards that can kind of build your deck around that you always discover into a certain thing. Maybe that matters that this mana value is 8, and so you would always hit what you wanted to with Trumpeting Carnosaur or other Discover cards, but you can still, for example, just play this on turn 2 and still have a play on turn 2. So some things to think about with deck building as well. I think this card's pretty strong overall. and I could imagine it seeing play in standard, being able to create a 1/1 every turn is definitely powerful, and then having sort of an upside as well with a Porcelain Gallery to kind of overrun your opponent. So definitely a powerful room, and looking forward to see what other kind of room cards we get in this set. All right, next up we've got the Haunt Woods Shrieker, which is a 3-mana Beast Mutant 3/3, and it says when it attacks, you manifest Dread. So this is another new ability. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into the graveyard. So notice that it does fill your graveyard a little bit, which is useful for Delirium and other graveyard synergies. And then you can turn it face up for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So kind of similar to other effects that we've gotten in the past. It also has another ability that for 2 mana you can reveal a face down permanent, and if it's a creature card, you can turn it face up, which is also quite powerful with some things that you turn down with disguise cards. You can turn down and then reveal them, flip them up, but also the manifest dread cards that you get off of this, you can also just pay 2 to flip them up. So if you had Omniscience, for example, which is coming to standard soon, and you hit that off of this, and then you pay 2, you could flip that. Oh no, it has to be a creature. If you had Atraxa, for example, you hit Atraxa, then you could flip that face up. So that would be pretty good. Or any of these, there's a giant new demon, which is pretty good, or any big creature you can flip up with this guy. So definitely a lot of potential. It's pretty strong 3-drop. Pretty good if you give it haste. So that's why I've got the Cunning Coyote here. If you plotted that on 2 and then you played this on 3, play the Coyote, give it haste, attack, you get the Manifest Dread right away. Makes it a little harder to block. So also pretty good with Llanowar Elves, obviously being able to play this on turn 2. Any 3-drop is better with Llanowar Elves, but this one's pretty sweet, especially because you could get the attack in a turn earlier and start making the 2/2s. And then there are some sort of like synergies with like face down creatures already because of different mechanics in standard that work with face down creatures. So we got the Yaris, which it says whenever one or more face down creatures you control do combat damage to a player, draw a card. So the Manifest Dread creatures would, if they got in, they could draw cards, and then if the Manifest Dread creature died, you return it to the battlefield face down and then turn it face up if you have a Yaris out. So there's definitely some cool synergies there with Yaris and other cards that care about face down cards getting flipped up with Manifest Dread cards. So some overlap there. Also, I thought about Insatiable Avarice because that can manipulate the top card of your library. So Manifest Dread, you could figure out exactly what you want to put on top of your deck. So for example, if you had this on turn 3 and then Insatiable Avarice turn 4, then you could put a big creature on top of your deck. You Atraxa, make sure you manifest dread it, and then the next turn flip it up with its ability. So there's some deck manipulation that could be interesting you could do with manifest dread. So a pretty cool card. I think it's pretty strong overall. Even if you don't have any of these synergies, just like a 3/3 that makes it 2/2 every turn is pretty decent as well. So definitely a strong one for sure. All right, next up we've got the Razorkin Needlehead, which is a 2-mana human assassin 2/2, and it has first strike during your turn. And whenever an opponent draws a card, it does 1 damage to them. So a lot of cool synergies with this. The first thing I thought actually was in the top right, Etrata, because I just made an assassin deck, and this is an assassin. So maybe it goes into the new assassin list. The more assassins we get, the better Etrata becomes. So something to keep note of that. You can also kind of take advantage of gifting cards to your opponent. There's other ways to kind of make your opponent draw cards. The second mode of Insatiable Avarice says target player draws 3 cards and loses 3 life. So forcing them to draw 3 would do an extra 3 damage with the Razorkin Needlehead. And it's quite good with Oger as well because it makes the 1 damage into 4 damage or whatever Oger's power is. So a lot of cool synergies. This card seems medium strong, but it does have some pretty cool synergies that I would say could make it very good. I think Oger especially might be a good home for this card. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Okay, next up we've got the Planeswalker, which is Kaito, Bane of Nightmares, a 4-mana, 4 loyalty, However, it has ninjutsu. The first time we've ever seen a planeswalker with ninjutsu. Ninjutsu, if you don't know what that means, it means if a creature gets through is unblocked, then you can pay its ninjutsu cost to put Kaido into play, attacking, and for its ninjutsu cost. So it would reduce the cost by 1. It put it in, and it is a 3/4 ninja creature with hexproof when it comes into play on your turn. So you would kind of get in for an extra 3 damage, and your opponent couldn't kill it because it's got hexproof. So pretty sweet ninjutsu ability. You would kind of have to set up your deck to have maybe some flyers or evasion to kind of get that ninjutsu ability. But it works really well with ninjas, and obviously older formats have a lot more ninjas. But I was just looking for standard ninjas, and we've got the Cybia Cryptomancer and Satoru, the Inflator, and there's Shapeshifter or Changelings in Standard, and that's basically mostly all the ninjas we got. So not a lot, but maybe we will get some more in Duskmourn. But the +1, the getting of emblem ninjas you control get +1/+1 is pretty powerful. Emblem I think you can get multiple of these. You can just kind of keep getting another one every turn. So imagine if you just played this on 3 or 4, and you just like +1, +1, +1, +1. All your ninjas are like +3, +3 the whole game. You can't get rid of emblems. So that is, I think, the best way and the most synergistic way you're going to want to play Kaido is in a ninja deck, or be able to take advantage of that emblem. You can also Surveil 2, then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn. So that's kind of cool if you get in for 3 with this, and then you just kind of zero it right away, draw a card, Surveil 2, draw a card. So again, good with evasive creatures, things that make your opponent lose a life. And then you can also use it to tap down a creature and put 2 stun counters on it. I think this card is quite good. I think it will certainly see some amount of play. This is my prediction, but you never know with Planeswalkers. Sometimes they kind of flop. But this one seems pretty pushed to me. And I think maybe the kind of baseline will depend on how many good ninjas we get in Standard. But I do think maybe in older formats too. Like in Pioneer, there's some decent ninjas that you can use with this, historic other older formats. But that emblem is really strong. So I can't imagine this doesn't find a home somewhere for sure. All right, next up we've got the Overlord of Mist, which is a 7-mana Avatar Horror enchantment creature. So it is an enchantment, and it has this new ability, Impending, which we've seen before, but this is another one. So you can pay it for its Impending cost, and it enters with 4 time counters on it. And it's not a creature until the last time counter is removed, and at the beginning of your end step, you remove a time counter from it. So essentially, it's kind of like Suspend. You kind of get 4 counters on it, and each turn you tick it down 1, and then it becomes the giant 6/6. But either way, when it comes into play, you get two 1 white insect creature tokens with flying. So it's kind of a nice bonus to play it on turn 4, for example. You get 2 flyers, and then when the impending cost goes down, you get this giant guy. However, what I'm thinking with this is that there's probably some other ways to use it that would be more powerful than just waiting the impending. So there are ways to remove counters, such as Glissa, Sunslayer. So if you played Glissa on turn 3 and this on 4, and you got in with the Glissa, which sometimes it connects because it has First Strike and Death Touch, it's hard to block that guy. You could use its last ability to remove 3 time counters from it right away, and then during your end step, the 4th one would go away. So then you would be able to attack the very next turn. So that would be pretty strong. And every time it attacks, you get 2 more insect creature tokens. You could also blink it, which might be even better. With Scroll Shift, that's I think the only card that blinks enchantments. But if you impending it, and then you get the tokens, and then you blink it, then you'll get more tokens, and it comes back as a 6/6, and it can attack. I also thought of like Indomitable Creativity would be kind of cool with this card. Not sure if that's good enough, but maybe like in Pioneer, if you had this on 4, because it gives you 2 tokens to target with Indomitable Creativity, right? And then if you targeted both of them, let's say you had 4 of these guys in your deck, if you targeted both of the insect tokens, then you'd get 2 more of these come into play, right? And then you get 4 more insect tokens and 2 6/6s. That's like 20 power right there. So it's kind of it's like a pretty good creativity target that also enables creativity. So maybe there's something there. Not sure, but just thought I'd put it out there for all your Pioneer fans, and yeah, let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea or not. All right, let's go on to the Jolly Balloon Man, which is a 3-mana, a red and white Boros human clown creature, legendary with haste. It's a 1/4. And you can pay 1 to tap to create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature in addition to its other colors and types, and it has flying and haste. Sacrifice at the beginning of next end step, activate only as a sorcery. So, we've seen it's kind of like Kiki Jiki, basically, but it does cost 1 to activate, which reduces its abilities for kind of like infinite combos. However, there is some infinite combos with this, of course. Um, but I was trying to think how you could use this. There's a lot of different ways you could use this. Any creature that has a good enters the battlefield ability or when it dies ability could be pretty good to just keep copying every turn and making it into a 1/1 red balloon creature. So it's definitely a powerful effect that you can use every turn. But like, what are the cool combos that I was thinking for this Tree of Perdition? Because making it into a 1/1 with haste is pretty good, right? Because then you could just give your opponent um, put them to 1 life, basically. Just tap it right away because it has haste and its toughness would be 1. So that could be kind of cute synergy there. With Forensic Researcher, you can kind of go infinite with that combo. There's like an enchantment. Whenever a merfolk becomes tapped, you get a token. So if you Forensic Researcher on 3 mana and then 4 mana, you play the Balloon Man and then create a copy of it. You can infinitely untap each other to create infinite tokens. Pretty good at maybe in a Soul Cauldron deck because then his ability is really why you're using this guy, but you can kind of give that ability to any other creature. And then the Village Bellringer, for older formats, this could be an infinite combo. If you have any sort of Landware Elves, for example, anything Birds of Paradise that taps for 1 mana, then you can kind of go infinite with this because you could go, say, Birds of Paradise on turn 1, uh, turn 2, play the Jolly Balloon Band, turn 3, play Village Bellringer, and tap the Birds of Paradise to activate to create a copy of the Village Bellringer. Sorry, it gives you a token copy of it with haste and flying, and then untaps the Jolly Balloon Man and the Birds of Paradise, and you just do it again and again, again and again, again, infinitely. So that would be pretty strong, but that's kind of the infinite combos. Let me know if there's any other cool combos with this guy. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you can do with him that I'm missing that might be pretty powerful. This is a pretty cool card, and I'm sure I'll think of some things to do with him. But let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking about the Jolly Balloon Man, and freaky, freaky art as well. So props for that, for sure. Okay, next up we've got Peer Past the Veil, which is a 4-mana instant. Discard your hand, draw X cards, where X is the number of card types among cards in your graveyard. Now, so this is kind of like Delirium-ish card. It really wants you to have lots of card types in your graveyard. And how do you use this? It's not like a super powerful card, I don't think, because there are quite a few cards that already do this effect in red that kind of let you discard your whole hand and then draw that many cards. But I think the trick with this card is that you want to kind of use this when you're empty-handed, because unlike those other cards that are templated like you draw cards equal to the number of cards you discarded, this, it doesn't. If you don't have any cards in your hand, then it doesn't really matter. Um, the first part of this doesn't really matter. You just draw cards. So it could be 4 mana, just like draw 5 cards if you have 5 types, which may be harder in some formats than others. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm not too convinced Delirium is actually that hard to achieve in Standard. I'll show you some other Delirium stuff later in this video, but the kind of maybe the homes that could be quite good is just like maybe a prowess deck, a little aggressive deck, maybe like a red-green deck with Landware Elves. We're just kind of trying to pump out your team as fast as possible. Just empty your hand, then play this to refill. Could be good with prowess, especially because it's an instant. So that's what I was thinking. Also pretty good with Starving Revenant because it can basically fuel the Descend 8 here, and then you draw a bunch of cards, and it triggers its last ability to ping your opponent every time you draw a card. So maybe there's some synergy there. I don't know. That card never really saw any play, but was a pretty cool card, I think. And yeah, we'll see. So I like this card. I think it has some potential. Really have to see. It really depends on like delirium and such. But yeah, pretty cool. Definitely something to keep in your back pocket. All right, Demonic Council is next, which is a 2-mana sorcery. It says search your library for a demon card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Demonic Council, get it? So it's kind of a tutor for demons, a demonic tutor, if you so say so. And it has delirium here, so another delirium. If there are 4 or more cards, type summon cards in your graveyard. Instead, search the library for any card and put it in your hand and shuffle. So demonic tutor if you have delirium. I have some hope that this actually might be pretty good in older formats where it's just really simple to get delirium with like artifacts that you can sacrifice for 0 mana, fetch lands. It seems like it's not too hard to get delirium in older formats. With like shifting woodlands and things like that. But in standard, it we'll see. Uh, I wanted to just focus on the first part of the card to see could you use this card usefully without having delirium. And I was looking at all the demons in standard, and there actually are some good ones that are involved in quite a few different combos. The Bloodletter of Alcazaz, there's sort of like a 2-card combo that kills with that, so you could just use that as redundant copies. Of Nicholas, there's also a 2-card combo that kills with that, so maybe you just like play both of them. Hidasuku and Carry, there's cool combos with that. Archfiend the Dross, pretty good card in general. So maybe it's worth it just to kind of tutor out and have redundant copies of these other demons that you want, and then if you do happen to turn on Delirium, you can get the other half of your combo. So I think this card has got potential in some combo decks. Yeah, we'll have to see about this one, and also kind of see what other demons we get in the set and appear in standard. So that'll also be a big part of how good this is. All right. Next up, we have another demon. So if this is involved in some cool combos you want to have in your hand, then you can have Valgavoth, the Terror Eater, which is a 9-mana, 9/9 flying lifelink Elder Demon Legend, and it has Ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, so opponent really has to go out of their way to kill this thing, which is pretty cool. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with it, and if you cast a spell this way, you pay life equal to its mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. So, good thing this has lifelink because you could be paying a lot of life with that last part. But gosh, this card is powerful if it sticks around for a couple turns, and you do kind of anything really that makes your opponent. I mean, a 9/9 flying lifelink, pretty hard to kill, is probably going to win you the game anyways. But what if you mill your opponent, so that's why I have Jace up here, or if you make them discard or kill other creatures, but especially if you mill them for a bunch, like with Jace, you could maybe like cast most of their deck or most of the cards that you exiled with it if you have enough life. So I think milling is maybe the most efficient way to kind of use its last ability. But yeah, again, kind of like if you just like Thoughtseize them or something, then you can cast the card that you choose. So a pretty cool card. How do you sneak this into play is really the question, because you're probably not going to cast it for 9 mana ever. I mean, you could for sure, but I always think of like Shadow Right Priest whenever they print like a giant black creature, because that can sneak this into play, which is pretty good, and maybe can hard cast it if your game goes super late. So maybe in a cleric deck, and there are some kind of new clerics that you could play with this. So yeah, there's an idea. Of course, any reanimation strategy, you could get this into play pretty easily. That's kind of the main way to cheat creatures into play. Yeah, let me know in the comments below any other cool ways you can think of just like getting this guy into play or ways to use it. I think it's powerful. I don't know if it's as powerful as like Atraxa, which is kind of sad because you probably just like want Atraxa instead of this, but maybe you want like Atraxa and this. We want like 8 giant flying lifelinkers in your reanimation strategy, so it could be played alongside Atraxa. Yeah, we'll see. But I have a feeling it's could see some play in some sense, and we'll also have to kind of see the demon synergies. I think maybe being a demon, I know it matters for Demonic Castle, but maybe being a demon is going to matter for other things in the set. So we'll see what else other demon synergies we get. All right, next up we've got kind of two cards that are quite similar. These are a cycle of enduring cards, which are enchantment creatures, but when they die, they also come back as in the enchantment, not the creature. But also you just get the ability of the enchantment anyway. So the first one is Enduring Curiosity, which is a 4-mana blue 4/3 cat glimmer enchantment creature with flash, and it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's pretty cool that you can kind of like get in with a bunch of creatures and then play this mid combat, or just kind of do it during your opponent's end step and then attack with it and draw a card. Pretty cool card. And like a counter go kind of strategy for blue certainly could be powerful. And then if they kill it, then any other creatures that get in, you get to draw a card. And then Enduring Innocence says it's a 2/1 lifelinker for 3. It's a sheep glimmer, which is kind of cool. And whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. And that ability only triggers once each turn. Sadly. So this guy, I think, is maybe a little better because you can play him early, gain some life, trade him off, and then kind of get the ability whenever you play another creature. You don't have to get in for damage to draw the cards. So maybe he works with just kind of like a white weenie kind of strategy, things like that. But most importantly, I think the combos I'm thinking about is with Zur in Standard, is that when these things die, Zerg has this ability that it can turn a non or enchantment into a creature and has base power and toughness equal to its mana value. So example for within Enduring Innocence, if it died, it comes back as an enchantment. However, then you can turn it back into a creature and it would be a 3/3 lifelink, I believe. And then you could, if just kind of, it would die and then come back again as a enchantment. Then you could turn it back into a creature. It would die, come back again as an enchantment. I believe it would kind of just like be unkillable at that point. So yeah, some cool synergies there. I don't know how good that actually is, but thought that might be fun to sort of make a Zur deck with all these different enduring cards and see if we can kind of make them continue to come back from the dead and become creatures and then die and come back again. So that's my ideas there. Let me know if you have any other thoughts about these in the comments below. All right, next up we've got Zimone, which is all questing, and it is a 3-mana blue-green legendary human wizard for 1 mana. It says at the beginning of your end step, if a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, create Primo, the Indivisible, a legendary 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token that put that many +1/+1 counters on it. And it gives you a bunch of examples of prime numbers. Those aren't all the prime numbers. One is a prime number, I believe, right? There's more than those, but those are probably the numbers that you're going to think about when you're thinking about how many lands you have in play. So again, I don't have Land War Elves on like all the slides because you know it's not out yet, but it is going to come to standard very soon. This card is quite good with Land War Elves, I think, to be able to play that on 1 and this on turn 2 because that's a prime number. Then you have 2 lands come to play. You get your Primo right then and there, and then maybe you could trade it off. And then next turn you could play a 3rd land and then get another Primo, and then when you have you could trade that off, and then on your 5th turn get another Primo. So this card's kind of cool. Power level, I'm not sure it's like super high, but the other thing I was thinking about that could be kind of fun with is having Mirror Box out because, usually when you get the other Primo, you would have to sacrifice the other one because it's a legend. But if you have Mirror Box out, um, it both pumps. This itself is a legend, so it would pump it, and it would pump Primo because Primo is a legend, and the legend rule wouldn't apply, so you can just get a whole bunch of Primos that are pretty big, and have +1/+1. So that would be pretty cool. And yeah, that's kind of the idea with that. Too bad Mirror Box just rotated, but you could play that in like Pioneer or something. And then maybe in Standard, it's kind of cool with all will be 1 because on turn 5, you could play all will be 1 with 5 lands, and then during your end step, you'd get a 5/5 which had 5 counters, and you'd trigger all will be 1 for 5, and you could shoot something for 5 damage. Something like that. And then if you got up to 7, then you could shoot something for 7 damage. So maybe there's some cool synergy there. Yeah, maybe there's some other cool stuff I'm missing with this. Again, let me know in the comments below what you think of Zimone, any cool synergies you're thinking about. All right, let's move on to Winter, which is a misanthropic guide and is Jund colors, 4 mana for a 3/4 human warlock, Ward 2. I think Ward 2 is pretty important on this guy, so don't just play him and he just dies immediately. Because you really want him to live until the beginning of your upkeep to draw 2 cards. So that ability, I think, is pretty strong, which you can use with Sheldred, which is really good with this. If each player is drawing 2 cards, they're losing 4, you're gaining 4 every single time. So maybe there's some cool synergy there. There's also the Razorkin Needlehead, which triggers whenever an opponent draws a card. So that can ping them, that could add up, and those are kind of in complementary colors to this guy already. But it also has Delirium, and it says as long as there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those cards, card types. So if you had 7 different card types in your graveyard, then your opponent's hand size would be 0, which would be kind of cool. So if you manage to have Delirium and then you play this guy past the turn, if your opponent can't kill him, then they have to discard down to that many cards in hand. So that could be good depending on like the deck. If you're playing against like aggressive deck, they might not. You'd have that many cards in hand. The ability does make them draw more cards, and then they kind of have to discard them. So there's kind of like some synergies between his abilities there. So I was kind of like thinking about how do we get Delirium in Standard easily. There are some cards. There's like creatures that are artifacts, and then there's creatures that are enchantments now, and then there's a land that's an enchantment now. So there's kind of this crossover. There's also instance and sorcery split cards. These cards that came out, like Cease and Desist, for example. So that is another way to kind of fuel Delirium a little easier and get more card types into your graveyard. There's Fable Passage, which is pretty good. So there are some ways to enable Delirium and get as many card types in your graveyard as possible. So, maybe that is worth it. Maybe that's sort of a Delirium deck is possible, and there's enough payoff for that. So I'll kind of have to see what other enablers we get, what other payoffs we get for Delirium. But I think this guy's a decent enabler for Delirium. If you can, again, if you can get like 7 different card types, that's quite good. But um, yeah, we'll have to see about that. All right. Next up, we've got an uncommon, which is the Unwanted Remake, a 1-mana instant, destroy target creature, and its controller manifests dread. And again, we talked about what that means. You look at the top 2 cards, then choose one, put it down as a 2/2, face down as a 2/2 creature, and you can flip it up if it's a creature for its mana cost. Now, this is a very cheap removal spell and might be quite good. To use. The thing I was thinking about with this is maybe it's a pretty good removal spell like in a mill deck, because it actually mills your opponent for 2 cards when you use this, because one of the cards goes into the graveyard and then the other one they have to put in play. So maybe it's like a removal spell in a mill deck. Like that's why I have Jace up here. Also, maybe you just want to blow up your own creature. There are some cool creatures that you just want to sacrifice or destroy, and then you turn that into a 2/2 creature, and then maybe it's also another creature that you can flip up. So you can also kind of like save one of your creatures that's about to die with this and turn it into a 2/2. A lot of uses, and like Hidetsugu and Kairi, you definitely want to have enough. Like if you're playing a combo with that, you want to make sure you have enough ways to destroy your own Hidetsugu, and also to kind of use the removal on your opponent's creatures. So maybe this is kind of like a cool removal spell in that type of deck. Also, I realized with Manifest Dread, Splash Portal is pretty sweet, because anything that blinks a creature and then brings it back. But Splash Portal kind of does it right away, so that's pretty good and is very cheap to do so. So you could sort of, if you had like a 1-drop and then you kind of destroyed it and Manifested Dread, the top card of your library was like a big creature or something like that, then you like Splash Portaled it on turn 2. You could do this. Then it would come into play right away, and you could just get like a huge creature on turn 2 that way. So, you have to get lucky to have it in the top few cards of your deck. But there's some cool potential if like being able to manifest dread is sort of a cheap ability to do. Blinking those things can be quite useful. So yeah, we'll see. Coming up next is another uncommon, this disturbing Mirth, which is a Rakdos 2-mana enchantment. I think this card is quite good actually. And when it enters, you can sacrifice another enchantment or creature. If you do, draw 2 cards. And then when you sacrifice this, you manifest dread. So there, again, another manifest dread card that's kind of pretty cheap to do. And what you really want to do with this is be able to sacrifice it and be able to sacrifice other enchantments or creatures. So Hopeless Nightmare, for example, if you want turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, then you played this, you could sacrifice the Hopeless Nightmare and draw 2 cards. And then if you sacrifice this to, for example, Braids, then you would manifest Dread. So there could be this red-black sacrifice deck that is often red-black's theme is sacrificing other things. You can also sacrifice this to Bargain to get the Manifest Dread. And then this other cool little common here, I believe that's common, 1 mana, it's called Fear, Fear of Lost Teeth. It's an enchantment creature, 1/1, and when it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target and you gain 1 life. So that could be kind of another example of another. You can play that on turn 1, turn 2, use this, sacrifice the Fear of Lost Teeth, and do 1 damage to anything and draw 2 cards. So some cool synergy enchantments going on there. Again, Fear of Lost Teeth is a pretty good one to enable Delirium as well, because it's 2 card types in 1 and it only costs 1 mana. So yeah, I think this card's got some legs and constructed potentially. We'll see. All right, next up we've got the Veteran Survivor, which is a 1 mana 2/1, and it introduces a new kind of mechanic here, survival. At the beginning of your second main phase, if it's tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, and as long as there are 3 or more cards exiled with it, it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. So a 1 mana for a 5/4 hexproof is incredibly strong. You do kind of have to work for that, of course. So what are the ways that you can kind of get this tapped? Of course, you could play this on turn 1, attack with it to tap it, and then during your second main phase, exile, say, a fetch land or something. Um, with this would be, reasonable. But let's say they have a 3/3 blocker back. Other ways, I was thinking of other ways just to get this guy tapped, and there's going to be other survival cards, I believe, in this set. So, this guy's kind of walking away scathe-free here from what's going on in his background. He's certainly a survivor. We've got the Stubborn Burrow Fiend, so anything with Saddle could be pretty good. I thought this one in particular would be nice because it mills you, so it kind of works with its first ability to exile cards from the graveyard. Warden of the Inner Sky wants you to tap creatures to get his ability, so that could be synergy. And then any sort of vehicle, also you can tap them to crew, such as the Subterranean Scooter. So we'll see what other survival cards we get, but those are kind of some cool ways to trigger survival without having to attack. But being able to attack is also another good option. Okay, next up we've got a rare split up 3 white 3 mana for a white sorcery, and choose 1, destroy all tapped creatures or destroy all untapped creatures. So again, the cards actually that we just saw up here are good ways to kind of potentially manipulate which creatures are tapped and untapped, your creatures. So Warden of the Inner Sky, or being able to saddle or crew things. So that could be nice synergies here with split up as well. But the other cards I was thinking of kind of are in blue. If you could cast this at instant speed, which if you have Valley Floodcaller, that would be kind of cool, right? If you went untap or end of turn, played Valley Floodcaller, and then let's say they have some untapped creatures trying to block your guys, you attack with all your guys. After attackers, you play this mid combat and destroy all their untapped creatures and get in. Or you play Valley Floodcaller, you have it in play. They attack you with all their guys, and then during combat you can play split up and kill all their guys. In older formats, maybe there's stuff that taps down their creatures. I was thinking like Cryptic Command is kind of a pretty good one that taps all your opponent's creatures. You could go end step or combat step, tap all your creatures, and then on your turn you do split up and destroy all tapped creatures. So things that can manipulate tapped and untapped creatures are quite good with this as well. Okay, next up we've got Norin, the Swift Survivalist, which is a 1 mana red human coward legend, which and it is a 2/1, so notably it is a 1 mana legend creature, so that can matter for some legend synergies as well. But it can't block, and whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you can exile it, and you can play the card from exile this turn. So I was thinking about this could be pretty decent in just like a red aggro deck because it just kind of lets you kind of alpha strike against blockers or something that if you're kind of going wide with red creatures, and then if anything gets blocked, you kind of basically just kind of bounces it back to your hand, and then you can replay it that turn. Pretty cool with Pia and Nalar, other things that care about casting stuff from exile, because then that'll trigger Pia, and you can get some Thopter tokens, and it's especially good with creatures, for example, like the Spyglass Siren that have like come into play abilities that you kind of want to kind of be bouncing or putting in exile and then coming back into play. So any creatures with come into play abilities, Spyglass Siren just kind of being a very cheap one, could be pretty good with this Norin the Swift Survivalist. All right, and we've got the Scrabbling Skull Crab, which I think is our last card here. It is. So the Scrabbling Skull Crab is a 1 mana 0/3 crab skeleton. Notably, it is a skeleton, which I actually just realized right now. So you could play this in a skeleton deck, which there are some skeleton synergies in standard. So there's that. But I was thinking about the Eerie ability, which is a new ability. Again, that enchantment land kind of works with this and all other Eerie abilities. Whenever enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, which seems like it seems like the rooms, or at least the one we got, it was very expensive to fully unlock it. So I don't know how often that's going to happen, but we'll see. Maybe we'll get some cheaper runes that unlock quicker. Um, Target player mills 2 cards. So, you know, this is kind of cool with, obviously any enchantment you play and you're playing a mill deck or maybe a self mill deck, you could use this as well. Um, but like, what are the cards you can kind of like combo off with this? Maybe Asinine Antics, because that creates a whole bunch of cursed rolls. If your opponent has, say, 3 creatures out, you could mill 6 cards with this. So that could be pretty sweet. And it also works, I think, particularly well with Intimidation Campaign, which is this enchantment that says when it enters, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life, you draw a card, and whenever you commit a crime, you can return it to its owner's hand. So if you play the crab on 1 and then Intimidation Campaign on 3, for example, it'll enter, the opponent will lose a life, you'll gain a life, you'll draw a card, and then it'll trigger the Eerie ability, and you can target your opponent, and that'll trigger the last ability of Intimidation Campaign. It'll come back to your hand, and then you can just keep doing that every turn. So 3 mana every turn to mill your opponent 2, draw a card, make them lose a life, you gain a life. So that could be kind of good to just continuously loop that every turn. Maybe not quite good enough, maybe good enough. I don't know. So there's definitely some synergy there, regardless. But yeah, pretty cool crab. We'll see what other kind of like, definitely depends on again how easy it is for the rooms to be unlocked. I think all the rooms are enchantments, so kind of triggers when you play the room and unlock the room, and we'll see what other kind of enchantments. But again, we have that enchantment land too, which is pretty cool for all the new eerie abilities that it may trigger just by playing a land as well. So that is it. We got a ton of spoilers done. We'll see how many we get tomorrow and in the coming days. I'll make some more spoiler videos. Hope you enjoy this. Again, let me know what you think about these cool new cards. Any cool combo synergies? What are you excited to build in standard and older formats? Yeah, let me know all your cool combo ideas. Love to hear them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.